Okay, this is the story of how Swiss cheese got its holes. By Daryl Hurst Jr. So one day there was this guy, and let's call him Bob, and he needed a job. So he was like, you know what, I should probably find a job. So he started looking through the paper, and he started looking at all the different places he could be working. He was looking, he could get a job as an airline pilot, or he's like, no, I'm not really qualified for that. And he said, there's a job for a bartender. You can't do that. He couldn't do that. There's a job for a doctor. Thought that was a pretty good idea. It pays really well. He'd have to go to school for a long time. He needed a job right now. So he decided against that idea too. So he decided, you know what? There's one more job sitting here, and he's like, cheesemaker. I always like cheese. Not a bad idea. I like to eat cheese. I like to smell cheese. I even like to cut the cheese every now and then. But I've never made cheese. Not a bad idea. And it says here it pays pretty well. Good benefits. So you know what? That's not a bad idea. So he went down to the local cheese store. Factory. It's a factory that makes cheese stores, apparently. And applied for the job. Went in and was talking to the owner. Let's call him Bob also. Bob's a common name. There could be more than one Bob in this neighborhood or in this country. So, talking to him about, asked if he ever had any, prior experience making cheese or anything. He's like, no, but, told him stories about how he likes to eat cheese and cut the cheese and smell cheese and whatnot. He's like, you know what? I'll give you a shot. He's like, so here, I'm going to start you out on this line over here. And he starts working, and he's making the cheese and putting the milk and the other ingredients together to make cheese, whatever that may be. I'm not a cheeseologist, so I don't really know, but apparently Bob knew. Got all his on-the-job training that day and was making cheese. So he started working, days went by, weeks went by. He's quite content. He's getting pretty good at this job. And he gets so good, they move him up to the next line. He got done, making the cheddar, and so they moved him up to the next line. He got really good making the Gouda, and so they moved him up to the next line, and so on and so forth. And they got to the next line one day, and they're like, today, Bob, we're gonna start you on the Swiss line. It's like, Swiss. Ooh, I like Swiss. Nice and creamy and white and everything like that. And they're like, you know what? I think you're gonna be good at this. So he's like, you know what? I think I'm gonna be good at that too. So he starts making the Swiss cheese and cuts it into big old blocks, and it's like, this is kind of a plain, ordinary cheese, Cheddar at least has, some, it's bright orange, so it's pretty cool. And some of these other ones we make, smell kind of funny. This Swiss cheese is just kind of boring. It's just a plain white block. Like, there's nothing real fancy to it. So he goes and talks to his boss, and it's like, Bob, spruce this up a little bit. Can we add some food coloring or something? I mean, kids like blue Kool-Aid. Maybe if we put blue in it. And his boss, Bob, kind of looked at him. He's like, I don't think people are going to want to eat blue cheese. And he's like, well, yeah, I guess you're right. Blue cheese, that doesn't sound very good. People look at it, think it was kind of moldy, so, yeah, we shouldn't make any blue cheese. So, well, what other colors do kids like these days? Like, well, they like green. Green cheese is definitely not a good idea, Bob. That's a terrible idea. He's like, yeah, I was just about to say that, Bob. It's like, okay, well, that's good. I'm just saying what other colors kids like. Kids like purple? That's a negative too, Bob. He's like, well, I don't know what other colors we could add to this plain white chunk of cheese. It's like maybe we could, spruce things up a little bit, add some swirls or something to it, or add some, special scent. Maybe we get to make it smell like something. Well, what do kids like? Well, bubblegum. Kids like bubblegum. You want to add bubblegum flavor and scent to our Swiss cheese? Like, well, thought. I mean, kids like bubblegum. They have bubblegum toothpaste and bubblegum. So, I mean, why not? It's like, well, we could try that. How about this? Take a chunk of this Swiss cheese home. Take it home tonight. Just sit there, stare at it, linger over it, kind of scratch your head about it. Take a notebook and write down all the ideas you could possibly have about how we could spruce up this Swiss cheese. Make it more marketable to kids, more marketable to the community. And come back in tomorrow, Bob, and tell me what you got. Well, okay. Not a bad idea. So, Bob finishes his shift. And as he's leaving, his boss calls out to him. He's like, "Hey, Bob!" Like, "Yeah, Bob, what's going on?" "Well, don't forget that block of Swiss cheese you got there." It's like, "Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Let me grab that block of Swiss cheese you got." So he takes it and starting to walk on home with this block of Swiss cheese. It's a pretty big block, so he has to carry it. He can't really fit it in his backpack or anything like that. And he's walking down the street and like, what could I do with this Swiss cheese? He's trying to think all the way home. What could I do to make this Swiss cheese more marketable and, give it something unique? Every other kind of cheese has something unique about it. This is just plain white. Nobody wants white, plain cheese. There's nothing funny about that. Nothing cool. It's going to be a flop. It's not going to be successful. So he starts walking home and he's like, what can I do? He's thinking over in his head. He stops every now and then, takes it out of his backpack, kind of looks at it, flips it around. He's like, what do I do with things that are boring? Paint them? No, I can't paint the cheese. I play with it. I don't know what I do with playing with cheese. That has nothing to do with selling this cheese. I dress it up. Put a little outfit on it or something. Doesn't really make any sense. What can I do? It's just this plain cheese. So he starts walking back home. He's walking down the street. Backpack's getting heavy and takes it off every now and then. And sits there and just kind of wonders, what could I do with this cheese to make it fancy? Got it. I got the perfect, most incredible, perfect idea. I need to run home. I need to write this down as quick as possible so I don't forget it. So he throws his backpack on and runs down the street. Run as fast as he can. Comes to the railroad crossing. There's a train going by. Dang, I need to hurry up and get home. How can I get home? Well, in between the cars, I just run and jump really quick. Jump in between the cars and make it. No, that's a terrible idea. Train cars are fast, and I'm not nearly as fast as the train cars. He's sitting there. He's like, dang, what can I do? And so he's sitting there, and maybe I can jump over it. Dig a hole under it. He's like, you know what? That's not a bad idea. So he digs back into his backpack, and he had a spoon in his backpack from a pudding cup he had for lunch. And so he starts digging a hole. Starts digging a hole underneath the train track. Gets about halfway, and all of a sudden there's silence. What just happened? He kind of pops his head up out of the hole like a gopher. He kind of looks around and he's like, oh, train's gone. So he crawls back out of his hole and walks across the train tracks, headed home. By the time he gets home, he's forgotten all about what his great idea was. Like, dang it. Now what am I going to do? My boss is going to kill me in the morning if I don't have some great idea about how to market the Swiss cheese. Got to come up with something unique, something fancy, something wonderful, something that's going to be like, wow, Swiss cheese, I got to go have it. So he lays the block of Swiss cheese on his coffee table and he's just staring at it, staring at it. What can I do? What possibly can I do? He gets up the next morning and the block of Swiss cheese is still sitting there. He had the air conditioning on, so it didn't go bad. But he gets up the next morning and the block of Swiss cheese is still sitting there. He's like, I got an empty notebook. I got nothing. I got absolutely no ideas about what to do with this. So he loads it back up on his backpack and starts walking to work and gets about halfway to work and sees the train tracks and looks both ways. No train coming this time, so he's like, okay, I can go right across. But he starts going right across and falls in the hole he built yesterday. Like, who with this stupid... Oh, yeah, it was me. Never mind. So he crawls back out of the hole and starts walking down the street some more and... Man. Muddied up my brand new pants falling down that hole that I built yesterday. It's pretty stupid. I'm going to go to work and I have no ideas. Boss is going to be mad at me. Got muddy jeans now. Got a hole in my knee. I don't know what I'm going to do. Keeps walking to work, Sees the job off in the distance, the factory, and he's like, shaking his head, just kicking rocks all the way, just hanging his head in shame because he knows he's a failure. He knows he's going to get fired from this job that he really, really needs. Gets to the top of the hill and looks down and sees the factory and sees everybody pulling in the parking lot. And, they all got their smiling, happy faces on because they're going to work. And, he's like, how am I going to show my face to my boss? What am I going to do? He starts walking down the hill, walking to work, and trips and falls, rolls down the hill. Like, how can this day get any worse? Then he gets to work and goes into his boss's office. He's like, boss, I'm sorry, I got nothing. I got this empty notebook, and presents the empty notebook to his boss, and his boss is like, wow, I thought you were going to come up with something. You had great ideas when we were talking yesterday. He's like, yeah, I had a great idea, and then I started walking home and got stuck by a train, and by the time I got home, I forgot all about what I was going to do, and I pondered over it all night long. I barely got any sleep, and it was terrible, terrible, terrible. Got up this morning and fell in a hole and tripped and fell and got my pants all muddy, got a hole in my knees, rolled down the hill, and gosh, I'm sorry, boss. I don't know. Please, just let me keep my job. He's like, well, I may have to demote you. You may have to go back down to Cheddar. It's like, no, boss, please, come on. I've worked really hard. I've given you everything I have to stay up the Swiss. It's like, I don't know. I'm gonna have to ask you to turn in that block of Swiss that I gave you. It's like, oh, boss, come on, just give me one more night, and come up with something. He's like, Bob, I just can't. I can't let you take the Swiss anymore. Something's gonna happen to it over time, and it's gonna get moldy. It's gonna get old, and I can't justify wasting a whole block of Swiss on your possible ideas. So he goes and he opens up his backpack and pulls it out, and everything in his backpack's just ramshackle, just because he fell down a hole, he fell down a hill, he tripped and fell, and just everything's just in shambles. And he pulls out this lumpy just mess of a cheese. The boss is like, to that cheese. And he's like, I'm sorry, boss. It's been one of those mornings. Like I said, I fell in a hole. I rolled down this big hill on the way to work, and I'm sorry. It's not in a perfect form anymore. I'm sorry. It's just everything's messed up with it. I'm sorry. I hope it's still somewhat edible. And boss looks at it and he's like, Bob, you're a genius. It's like, what? He's like, "You're a genius, Bob. You're being promoted to vice president of Swiss operations." It's like, what? The boss looks at it. And he's like, "I don't know who gave you this wonderful idea and why you had to hide it from me." It's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Bob, don't you see? Look at the holes in the cheese." Kids love holes. They have holy genes. They like to stick holes in balloons. They like to dig holes in the backyard. It's perfect. Kids will love holes in cheese. They can stick their fingers or their tongue or their nose or anything through it, Bob. This is a wonderful idea. Wonderful, Bob. It's like, thank you, I guess. He's like, "From now on, every block of Swiss cheese that we make, I'm going to let you personally inspect and personally take care of." It's like, "So how are we going to go about getting the holes in it from now on?" He's like, "Bob, every night I'm sending you home with a block of cheese." He's like, "So every night you want me to fall in a hole and every morning you want me to roll down a hill?" "Exactly, Bob. And for that we're paying you double." Well, I guess I'm getting paid double. And that's the story of how Swiss cheese got their holes. Thank you very much.